John, who is the best player that and I don't mean from Duke or from Carolina or Ball from UCLA. Who is I know you're not too into the NBA these days, but who is a player that we will watch and in a couple of years say, man, that guy, a lottery pick, and we maybe didn't even recognize it at this point.
John Collins from Wake Forest, who's going to play in the first four. Wake Forest plays Kansas State, to me, was the best big man in the ACC this year, not named Bonzie Colson. Somebody who is just an effortless scorer, an effortless rebounder, really skilled. I'm sure he'll potentially test the NBA waters this year, but I would say that and the fact that you can watch him in a standalone game would obviously make it more exciting. So I'd say John Collins from Wake Forest, just again proving, Tiki, the depth of the ACC.
Yeah, well, the ACC didn't get quite as
they're
many
so
as
deep. They're
going
to play a play-in game. It's such a great conference.
Dude, the bottom of that conference ain't in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about Syracuse yet. I mean, listening to Boeheim afterwards, he didn't sound overly disappointed. I expected something bombastic.
This
and
was
it wasn't.
the first year in a long time I felt like that the bracket was what it was. You didn't have bid stealers emerge during championship week. You didn't have anything really dramatic. And look, the NCAA selection committee makes it real clear that it's about who you beat, who beat you, and where you beat them. And the big difference in Syracuse last year versus this year was the wins that Syracuse had away from the Carrier Dome. Last year, Syracuse won at Duke and beat Texas A&M and UConn on the neutral court. That's a big difference.
And this year, what were they, 2-11 away from
2-11 away from home, and again, all their big wins were at home.
Yeah,
So,
and they got crushed by St. John's, who's not good yet. They
lost
points.
and they got crushed by BC, and they lost to Georgetown and Connecticut.
I forgot about the BC. BC, that's a tough job. Boston, tough job, right?
Again, we always talk about this this time of year, like, do people really understand what Al Skinner did there?
That's
I mean,
point.
people were so quick to run him out of the town because maybe he wasn't the hardest working. Like, BC was a perennial NCAA tournament team, went to the Sweet 16, played Duke in the ACC championship game when they had J.J. Redick and Sheldon Williams. This was Boston College.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Boston College in 2006 lost to Villanova by a point in the Sweet 16. Was that close to getting the Elite Eight?
Didn't they have? Didn't Troy Bell win Player of the Year back to back? Pretty sure he did, right? Back in the day, little point guard.
There was one year in the old Big East that Boston College was picked last and finished first.
Skinner did a really good job. You're right. People didn't appreciate the job he did. What else? Florida State.
Yeah.
I look at them as
ACC.
a 3 seed. Come on. How were they a 3 seed? I'm not buying them as much.
Florida State's beaten Louisville. They've beaten Duke. I mean,
but they beat Duke when Duke wasn't Duke.
But they still beat them.
Yeah.
I mean,
did they? I mean, if Duke
they beat them.
I'm saying if Duke isn't healthy, did you really beat Duke?
No, I mean, they beat them early in the year, Brandon. I mean, that was. I'm just saying. I mean,
those freshmen were still kind of feeling their way.
All right, but that's fine. But I mean, you can't say so. Kansas didn't beat Duke early in the season at the Garden.
But there's always context to wins, is what I'm saying. Yes, they won the game.
100%. But I think Florida State played in the ACC. They won a lot of games in what was numerically the best conference ever, from top to bottom. Numerically, it was. Yeah. So, look, this is the trepidation you have with Florida State. Florida State's core, and this is the region of opportunity, by the way, the West region.
All right, here we go.
Florida State's core, Xavier Rattan-Mays, Dwayne Bacon, Jonathan Isaac, have not played together collectively in the NCAA tournament. That's a concern. The positive for Florida State is they have an all-airport team type roster. It looks like an NBA team. But when you look at this region, and I'm going to write about this in my column tomorrow, this is the best draw that Sean Miller has ever gotten to go to a Final Four. You look right now at this region. Florida State's unproven as a 3. Notre Dame obviously is good, but it's not a Notre Dame team with Grant and Connaughton. Gonzaga is obviously unproven as a 1. So the door is open for Arizona to get to a Final Four.
You're talking about Arizona. I don't know, just making sure people knew you were referring to. But it is opportunistic for them. Gonzaga is the number 1 in the region of opportunity. And I'll save that loss to BYU about a week and a half ago or so. Are they deserving of the number 1?
Gonzaga? Yeah, no, I think that Gonzaga is a team that, again, went 32-1. And, I mean, they did beat Florida. They did beat Iowa State. They did get into a situation where, I mean, let's face it right now, they had a scenario where they did play Arizona. Now, Arizona didn't have Parker Jackson Cartwright or Alonzo Trier, but still, they were a team that handled their business. Look, they had a bad ending to one game against BYU, but based on, I think, the makeup right now of 1 seeds, I mean, I don't think you can penalize a team for going 32-1.
John, which is the coach out there, if there is one, that needs a solid run, not necessarily to hold on to their job, but to dispel the notion that they're just the games get a little bit more important. They get a little tighter around the collar. Anybody that jumps?
You think to validate themselves?
Yeah, just and there's different levels of validation. Clearly, there's on the high, like Bill Self. I mean, listen, Bill Self, undeniable. I mean, as good as Kansas is every year,
He's won a championship though.
I understand that he's got one. There have been moments where Kansas has woefully underachieved. And I don't even know if he's my answer, although I'm not as big a Billy Self fan as some others are. But is there a coach right now getting ready to play that just needs to slay some demons that seem to creep up?
Sean Miller. No, I mean,
Sean Miller.
It's the elephant in the room, and he'll be the first one to acknowledge that. I remember I was out for CBS in Tucson before the 13-14 season, and I asked him, how often do you think about going to a Final Four? And he said probably every 10 or 15 minutes. And this was before Arizona had lost to Wisconsin in back-to-back Final Fours. Look, he is the best coach in college basketball not to coach in a Final Four. Another thing, if we're going to stay with the West Coast theme that you have to look at, is Steve Alford. Steve Alford, the last time he was in the NCAA tournament as a high seed this high was New Mexico, and they lost to Harvard.
I had them going to the Final Four that year.
Right, they lost to Harvard.
Was that 4 years ago now?
That was 2013. So
boy.
Steve Alford, again, did a good job at Iowa, did a great job at New Mexico, but didn't win in the tournament. So he's another one who, again, hasn't coached in the Final Four, has the best player in the tournament right now in Lonzo Ball. And look, this is UCLA's best chance to get back there since Russell Westbrook and Kevin Love and company, went there in 2008.
Now, everybody always looks for that trendy upset pick. Where is it in this year?
There's different types of upsets. You obviously have the day 1 and 2 upsets for the Dreamers with the double-digit seeds.
Mm-hmm.
I have in the round of 64 an upset in the region of prestige, the East region. I'm having East Tennessee knock off Florida in the 13-4.
Wow.
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Florida, again, is not just playing in its first NCAA tournament under Mike White. Mike White has not coached in the NCAA tournament. Now, the big thing you have to look at when you're trying to evaluate potential upsets is how big is the discrepancy in size up front. Steve Forbes, the head coach of East Tennessee State, who was an assistant under Bruce Pearl when Tennessee went to the Elite Eight in 2010, has 2 high major transfers up front. Tevin Glass from Wichita State and Hannah Mascara-Perea from Indiana. So they're not going to see, obviously, something they haven't seen. Now, there's also something that you need if you're looking at the anatomy of an upset, and that's you have to have a dynamic guard who can make plays. The name to keep an eye on for East Tennessee State is T.J. Cromer, averaged over 30 a game in the Southern Conference semis
Still
and
no
finals.
notes, by the way, just
and
as a point of
again,
reference.
went to the free throw line in double-figure attempts during each of those 2 games.
That's a good
That's
stat.
my round of 64.
Wow.
Now,
And by the way, can you do some research next time you come on? I mean, you're embarrassed of the show.
Fine.
I mean,
Now,
really, you're such a slacker, John. This guy
I look at right now.
doesn't know anything.
I look at the region of chaos, Kansas's region, and look, Kansas, I know, is seeded number 1. I know that Kansas, if it plays in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8, will play in Kansas City, okay, which is obviously a big thing. But I have not really been enamored with Kansas this year compared to past years under Bill Self because they don't have vintage Bill Self size. They don't have the post play and the post depth that Kansas teams have had in years past. Now,
So who knocks them off?
I have Miami beating
Wow.
Kansas and
Wow.
going to the Elite 8.
Wow.
And I look at Miami. Miami has a coach that's been to a Final Four, that's
Love
been
him.
National Coach of the Year, and has beaten Duke and North Carolina in the last month. So, look, you look at that region right there, the region of chaos. Miami's going to play Michigan State. It's veterans against freshmen. I'm going to take Miami. And I look at the makeup right now of this Kansas team, and I look at what Miami can do defensively in slowing the pace, and I look at the ability of Jim Larinaga more than any other coach to use ball screen scenarios to get big men moving. It affects your interior defense, and it opens up opportunities for your post players. Now, think about Kansas's interior defense this year. When Kansas plays Georgia, Yante Maton goes for 30 and 13. When Kansas plays Davidson, Peyton Aldridge goes off. And when Kansas played Texas at Fog Allen Fieldhouse, Jared Allen, the freshman for Texas, had 22 and 19. So when you're looking
Still
at
no
this
notes.
Kansas team, you're looking at a team, again, that is seated high, that has pedigree, but it doesn't have the interior defense. And I think there's a matchup right there against the coach that has won big in the tournament,
Yeah.
Jim Larinaga, that's
Miami-
looming for the Jayhawks.
Miami also beat Virginia in that race to 40 without their starting guard.
That was grotesque.
It was hard, but they won on the road.
But that's a
I mean,
perfect
that's
example of how
it's a
good
testament to
the
Larry
Was it
defense
Nagle.
overtime?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
That's why it got to 50. BT.
That's right. That's right.
But
that's
that's a
what it was.
perfect example of how, so think about this. Miami is a team that could play Kansas. Miami has beaten Duke and Carolina and won a game at Virginia.
You got to follow this guy on Twitter. Obviously, all over it. He consumes this. He inhales it. He's really, not just because I've known him forever. I think he's the best at this. I really do. At Jon Rothstein. John, good seeing you, pal. Good work. Doesn't mean you'll get all this stuff right. I mean, you're like the rest of us. We'll see a lot of X's
it's well
on your
documented
thing.
that the more you know about this, the worse that you're going to do.
I've always said that. Good seeing you, pal. Keep it up.
Thanks, guys.
There he is, Jon Rothstein, CBS Sports College Hoops Insider.